Welcome back, everybody. Nuts and Bolts Sports, NBA. Raj, Jordan, Henry, as always, NBA is officially back. Regular season is here. Either of you guys still having trouble processing the fact that basketball is already back, 71, 72 days after the previous season ended? Because I certainly haven't quite processed it yet.
It's weird that it's back so soon, but at the same time, it also feels so weird that teams are only playing their first and second games the week of Christmas. So it's like a double paradox of like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel right at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like there is no off season. Like
Yeah.
everything happened in the blink of an eye, and like now we're full-fledged regular season now. So it's like it's nice. Don't get me wrong, but then I saw what Raj said right now: 71 days off season. It's like the shortest off season in all major league sports here in like North America. So it's a crazy time, but honestly, I'm happy. I'm just happy it's back.
I am too. I'm really happy it's back, and I think because like we kept up the show in the off season, and like you guys are saying, like the stuff that happened in the off season was just like back to back to back with the draft and free agency and all these trades and whatnot. Like it didn't really feel like it went on break at all, and I can only imagine how the players are feeling. That I guess the bittersweetness of it being back, being excited to play and get on the court, but also not having that full break, and I think it certainly impacted some of the play that we saw yesterday. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's start by talking about those two season tip-off games, and let's start with the first one, and we'll go in order. The Eastern Conference, or the Eastern side of the United States first here in Brooklyn. We had the matchup between the Nets. Got to see our first look at KD and Kyrie on the same team. Steve Nash being the head coach there. Kyrie is really the only person from that core group that had been that had played last season, hadn't really gotten any exposure last season because KD was out for the entire year, playing against the Golden State Warriors, who are also sort of, a little bit of a new look. Steph Curry only playing 5 games last season, back and healthy. James Wiseman coming in there, the number 2 pick in the draft. Steve Kerr, trying to do what he can with the group that he has there. Draymond not playing, obviously, and it kind of showed. The Nets pretty handedly took that game, 125-99 being the final score. The Nets winning. It was a lopsided game almost the entire time. The Nets were up by right around 30 for most of the game, if I'm remembering correctly. And if I'm being completely honest, both games were kind of lopsided, but we'll get into the second one in a second. The Nets, we kind of expected them to, I think a lot of us expected them actually to get off to a bit of a slow start. And because the Warriors, even though they're missing some of their key pieces, we expected them to just kind of come in there and be ready and show up, especially with their leader being healthy and on the court with Steph Curry being there. I think we just kind of expected them to show up, but that was certainly not the case. Kyrie and KD both looking like Kyrie and KD of old. And the thing that you heard on the broadcast was that team is just so deep over and over and over. You heard all the broadcasters saying it, everybody on inside saying it. Like, that's just what they kept saying. And it showed, because it wasn't just those two guys. I mean, 26 and 22, I think, between the two of them. But then you had Karis LeVert showing up, Spencer Dinwiddie giving them good minutes. All around, a very, very strong performance by basically everybody on that team. Henry, I'm going to toss it to you first here. What did you see out of that Nets-Warriors matchup? What stood out to you?
I just feel bad for Steph Curry. Honestly, like, I think now just realizing Draymond, didn't play, and we all know that Klay is out. But god damn, like, he looked like just not even a one-man show, because he only had 20 points and he was struggling from the field himself. But it just goes to show that the Warriors are going to have a struggling season. Like, I think Kelly Oubre is a good pickup. He only had 6 points last night, but it's just like it's a tough situation for the Warriors. I know it's a season opener, and I know we shouldn't exaggerate over certain topics, when it comes to the first game of the season. But I guess it's a glimpse for what's to come. They're in the Western Conference. They're in the toughest conference in the NBA. So Steph Curry, he only had 20 points. He had to play at his MVP level again in order for them to at least make the playoffs, at least as the 8th seed. Looking like at this point, I know they face the Nets, which is, from a glimpse from them, like, they look like the best, that they can be the best team in the NBA. So, to start off like that, it's going to be, on a bad note. But, going against other teams, like, I can see them, winning against the Jazz and other teams like that in the West. But like I said, without Draymond, without Klay, it's going to be a struggling season. For the Nets, just seeing Kyrie and KD both played only 25 minutes, and to score and to play the way they did in such a short amount of time, I'm like, okay, what's their per 36 now and stuff like that? How is it going to look like, as the season just keeps progressing? And it was scary to see, honestly. Like you guys know me, I'm a Celtics fan, but God, like they literally have every single weapon that I wish we had. Like they have Karis LeVert coming off the bench, and he dropped 20 himself. Karis LeVert is coming into, as a player himself. Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen. They have the core group, which I always advise do not trade that for James Harden. Especially, we'll get into that later. But like that's why I'm like they need this like two predominant players or ball handlers that have a core group that can support them, and that just showed out yesterday. And players like Joe Harris too. Joe Harris was balling, and their depth is insane. It's just how's their chemistry going to work? As the season plays on. I know, like I said, not to exaggerate for the first game of the season, but the Nets look really good, really scary, and I can see them coming out of the East already. That's kind of an exaggeration. I know. I said not to exaggerate,
First
but
hot take of the year.
Not for real. But no, Jordan, I'm gonna toss it to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's it's always tough to gauge these first games. You don't want to overreact. You don't want to underreact. But I mean, for the Nets, it went about as well as it possibly could have. You didn't have to play your guys heavy minutes. Katie and Kyrie looked really good and really, healthy, which I think is the biggest thing that Steve Nash and that staff's looking for. Everybody shot the ball well. They shot, they're 15 or 35 from three. That's going to be a winning recipe all year for any team. They have a lot of different lineup combos too. We talked about their depth. They can play a lot of different guys in a lot of different times, which is something that the Warriors really can't do, even with Clay and Draymond. Looking at their stats and their roster from yesterday, I mean, you got guys off the bench. You got, Brad Wanamaker, who was kind of up and down during his Celtics tenure. You got Kent Bazemore, a lot of these other guys. They don't really, they don't strike me as like a huge offensive firepower, group coming off the bench, which is, going to make the job for Steph Curry and Draymond and those guys, when he's back, a lot tougher. I feel bad for Steph. He's got to play, like you said, back to his MVP season. He's got to play out of his mind if they want to even have a chance. So I don't blame him necessarily for struggling a little bit last night. He's probably, if anything, trying to force it just because he knows he has to. But like I said, for the Nets, they look good. It's perfect start. They're just going to try to build on that each game. Obviously, every game's not going to be a 15 to 30 point blowout. But for the Warriors, you just try to regroup, try to get Draymond back. Wiseman looked good in some minutes that he had. Defensively, a lot of work to do there, but offensively, he's going to be able to at least give them, I think, 13 to 15 a game. It's going to be up to that Wiggins-Oubre duo that we talked about. Oubre had some nice flashes, but we need him to be a really consistent, 18 to 22 point a game scorer. And I mean, Wiggins is Wiggins. I mean, I have my thoughts on him. I would have sold his stock probably like within the first year that he played in this league. So I don't really have a lot of confidence in him. But at the end of the day, if they want any chance to win a lot of games and make a run at the postseason, he's got to show up as well. So it's a tough spot for the Warriors for sure. And the Clay injury it sucks more and more because he's definitely a stable part of that group.
Yeah, you imagine that Draymond coming back does, it's not nearly the same type of blowout that it was yesterday because Draymond is just such a defensive anchor for that team, and not that he swings it for it to be like a 5-point game or anything, but it's not a 30+ point game for most of the second half and whatnot. You don't see that type of blowout. I think if Draymond is playing, he's also the heart and soul of the team. So you're missing that fire, you're missing that energy, and that definitely does hurt you, especially in a season opener where you want all the energy backing you. But yeah, it was the conversation that the three of us were having going into the game before it started, is whether or not Steph's season average was going to be, over under 30. Where is he going to fall in the mid 20s? Like, what is it going to be? And this is the conversation that the inside guys are having too, is like, if this team wants to win, Steph has to average somewhere between 30 and 33 points a game. This team is not going to win if he's not. And yeah, when he puts up only 20 points, doesn't shoot the ball particularly well, and then has to sit for a lot of the second half because they're just getting blown out, you're just not going to get that type of performance out of them. And he's gonna get back into it. Like he's a shooter. He's a shooter first, and I know he's one of the most reliable shooters, if not the most reliable shooter in the history of the NBA. But even then, he might need a little bit of time to get back in his flow because he missed almost the entirety of last season. I do agree. Wiseman was a bit of a bright spot for them. There's definitely some work to be done, but once they sort of let him take over, they benched a lot of the starters and let him sort of play with the ball. He's hitting jump shots and whatnot. He looked like he had his confidence pretty early, and putting up 19 points in your rookie debut against that Nets team, having not played, any preseason or anything, no summer league, none of that.
Right.
That's impressive. That's really impressive, and I think the Warriors have to be very, very excited they kept that pick. Hopefully he does continue it because I think he showed a lot of promise yesterday, and I think that's going to be exciting to see. But yeah, on the Nets side, I mean, like you said it there, Henry, like Joe Harris, even though he only had like 10 points, like he earned that contract. He earned that contract with the performance that he had yesterday, and that's kind of what you need out of these supporting guys. None of these supporting guys, I know LeVert dropped 20 yesterday, but you're not really expecting them to go out there and drop 15 to 20 a game. But if you can have 3 or 4 guys come up behind Kyrie and KD and put up somewhere between 10 to 15. That's all you really need, because those guys, I think on average, KD's probably going to be well above 22 points a game, and Kyrie will probably sit there right around that 25, 26 point per game mark. This Nets team looks lethal, and I know it's just one game, but that's what we do. We exaggerate after one game, and that's what's so fun about all this stuff. And with this Nets team, I think there's certainly some fear in a lot of these top tier teams in the league, just off one performance, because we knew the potential was there, but we were just like, how long is it going to really find them to take them to find that groove? And they found it immediately. And I imagine they carry that momentum because these guys like Kyrie and KD, they've been there, they've done that. I don't think these guys really let it go. They're going to have down performances, sure, throughout the season. It's a long way to go, but I'm extremely impressed with the Nets.
Again, KD really, I think, was like, Kyrie is going to battle his health issues throughout the year, like he always does. But KD, I think, just watching, the minutes that I did, it wasn't like I didn't feel like at any point like, oh, this guy's coming off a torn Achilles. Like, he looked very fluid, moving around the court. Yeah. Even though some of the shots didn't fall, and that's, again, you don't play for 500 plus days. Even a guy of his consistency on offense is going to take a little bit. But I think that's probably the most encouraging thing if you're rooting for the Nets, is just how good he looked, because all respect to Kyrie, KD is the best player on that team by far. Yeah. And is the biggest X factor as to whether or not they can win a title. If he's returns, we talked about it all offseason, if he can return to 95% of what he was when he got hurt, which to me was the best player in the world, that's huge. That's a game changer in the East for sure.
Like when you talk about the athleticism, like I'm thinking about that fast break between him and Kyrie where he dunked it from like a step or two from inside the free throw line. He had that spring, he had that athleticism that we saw before the injury, and you do sort of fear, like, how long is it going to last? And it's always going to be in the back of our heads. I think this entire season, and maybe moving forward for his entire career, it's going to be in the back of our heads, or whether or not this guy can actually stay healthy for an entire season or whatever it may be. And I imagine the Nets, especially if they're playing this well early on in the season, we're going to see KD and Kyrie maybe resting some games even pretty early on here. If they have a pretty good number of wins, higher above the clip than a lot of people are expecting them to be, I would not be surprised at all. Do either of you guys have thoughts? I know it's kind of hard to tell after one game, but the way Steve Nash kind of handled the minutes and whatnot, because I think, again, there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot to sort of see in terms of what Steve Nash is going to do. But I think he did a good job of like spreading the wealth around his team, and like they went deep, and they used a lot of those guys. I think they ended up playing like 10 or 11 players through the entire game, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was a record, actually. It was like 15.
Oh, was it really? It was higher.
3,
oh, wow.
6,
Okay.
Yeah, 10 on the bench, 5-star, which I believe I saw was an NBA record. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, you're right. That's I'm sure Nash and D'Antoni and even Amari Stoudemire had those meetings before the year, and they've met with KD and Kyrie about like, hey, here's what your minutes are going to look like. They've met with the team, and they said, hey, we know we have a lot of guys, there's a lot of mouths to feed, and they're going to try to do the best they can. And, their goal is to hope for every night to be like last night, because that provides the opportunity. But they did a good job, and I think you're right. You're going to see a lot of that this year when they have, if they're rolling and they have a game. If you have a lot of the bench guys playing well, and you're playing like a really weak East team, they might sit KD or Kyrie or both if they think they can get a win and get those guys some rest, or if they can only play them 20, 25 minutes. I definitely think that's going to be one of their top priorities.
Do you guys think that this Warriors team was like a good sort of sample for us to see what we can expect out of this Nets team? Because like we said, they're missing a lot of players, but I think a lot of people came into the season still expecting Golden State to be one of the stronger teams in the West, just because Steph and Steve Kerr really, I think between those two guys, you expect that team more often than not to be atop the West. I'm curious if either of you guys think that this was like maybe just, this team is still sort of rusty, it still needs to find its groove, or do you think it actually was a good sample size because they do have some good defensive players, they do have some good offensive players, and the Nets are going to certainly have much more difficult challenges, but this was a good sort of starting point for that team?
I think honestly, the Warriors just need time. They're one of the teams that didn't make the bubble, so that whole organization is just rusty right now. At times, at least I saw it. I don't know if you guys did. They looked very miscombobulated on the court. Like they were just on scramble mode, and you see Steph Curry trying to find his shot. And here's the thing: with this roster, Steph Curry is not gonna get his spacing that he used to get. with when he had KD, Clay, and Dre. Draymond's going to come back, but having key players, especially I was talking to somebody else yesterday, and then they were like, like when when the Warriors had guys like Leandro Barbosa, Harrison Barnes, it all worked well for Curry spacing. Yeah, yesterday he tried so hard to either create his own shot or find his shot, because I think that's the biggest thing, is just adjusting to Steve Kerr's system, for the incoming players like Kelly Oubre, James Wiseman, and all those guys. Eric Pascal, even though, he had a good rookie season last year, hopefully he can develop in his own too, become that other, Harrison Barnes type of player. And Andrew Wiggins, like, hopefully as the season goes, like, I know there's just so much slander to him, but come on, 13 points in a season opener. Like, you're almost a veteran yourself. He's going into like his seventh. He has enough experience, in the league to have improved at least a little. And he did average 23 points, one season with Timberwolves. So he has that capability. But is it a confidence thing? Is it like the whole Jimmy Butler incident that happened when he was on the Wolves? Like, did that really like ruin his whole perception going forward? And that's something the Warriors can't have. But I think that's the biggest thing. If the team around Steph Curry, if this roster can help Steph get spacing and find his shot in order to fully maximize who Steph Curry is, I think the Warriors will have a better chance in the West, because if they play like they did, if this is their consistency going forward, then hell no, they're not making the playoffs. I'm sorry.
I think it is a confidence thing, to be honest. I think,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think he maybe had, he's not, he never struck me as one of those guys, even at Kansas, as somebody who had that natural, like KD and some of these other guys that come in the league, they have that natural confidence right away. James Harden, LeBron, all those guys. Wiggins never struck me as a super, number one pick who had that kind of confidence. And I think when we're the age of social media too. I'm sure he sees all the comments. I mean, he was getting destroyed on Twitter last night. And like you said, this is year 7 now for him. So it's not like this is his first go around. So you hear that stuff year after year after year. You don't always quite live up to the expectations. You look at your own numbers, you hear it from friends, family, and experts. It wears on you. So I think the mental game is definitely a big part of it as well.
Yeah, I feel bad for the guy, but it goes to show that what you're saying, Jordan. Like he was never really even that guy that we expect him to be, even at Kansas and whatnot. Like that's why the Cavs made that trade. I mean, they picked him up for the first pick, and then they were like,
"Well, LeBron made that trade." I will come back if you trade him.
And you look back, like that Cavs team wouldn't have made the finals with Wiggins as opposed to Love. Like that they would not have. And Love was certainly a better pickup for him. But I hope it is hard to say now that Wiggins will like find his groove, because he is in year 7, and as a vet, like at this stage of his career, is there really even that much room for him to improve? I don't think so. I think he's kind of hit his ceiling, and it sucks to see that. But
that's why you don't take Canadians first overall.
Jamal Murray might tell you otherwise. But
him and Anthony.
Fair enough.
Isn't Anthony Bennett Canadian too?
Yeah, but that was come on. Like that's
another topic right there.
But yeah, it was a fun game to watch, because at least the first half was fun to watch, just to see the Nets kind of explode, and then it kind of went downhill from there. And I was certainly checked out for most of the second half. But let's go ahead now and get into the late game.
Could I interrupt? I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh, you're good. Go for it. This is your thing. This is your game. So
no. We'll get to that. I feel like we should cover some breaking news here. I'm gonna put it up. They just announced that the game's postponed tonight the Houston OKC game. They don't have enough eligible guys, I guess, with all the COVID tests. I know this has been like a developing thing all day. Looks like I said, they've been testing. Apparently it wasn't Harden. I guess he tested negative and all that yada yada from his event. But yeah, so it looks like we have our first kind of COVID related situation of the year. So that's interesting.
Hey, we expected this, and like I didn't expect it to happen so early on, but it's gonna be inevitable. And it's just players can't be. I know Harden is not the one to, but you can't be reckless like that. Like you can't put your other teams or your other teammates like in jeopardy like that. Like I love James Harden. I love ever since he joined the Rockets and stuff, and when he was at the Thunder, like he's a very entertaining player to watch. But he's kind of losing, at least my own personal respect. Like we are still in a crisis where you need to follow certain protocols in order to have a functioning league, and he just doesn't care. And like now when he gets called on his BS, Hey, what were the excuses, Jordan? You were tweeting about it.
He just said that it was it was an event. Like that was like the phrasing he kept using was like, oh, like I went to my friend's event and it wasn't a strip club and like it was just a bunch of it was his homegirl and I'm like, come on, man. Like I understand the legal team had to advise you on how to exactly make an Instagram statement, but come on, like. I don't know. He's just we beat this into the bush so many times that he's just handling this so poorly. So I don't even want to give him more attention, but just wanted to point out that it's interesting. We talked about the possibility before the season that something like this could and probably would happen. It's just interesting, like Henry said, that it happened so early. I mean, second day of the year, first game for both of those teams, or no date announced yet, but it's just they're going to be pushed back to a later date.
Yeah, Henry, looked like you're about to say something else.
Yeah, it was just right before the show. Woj tweeted that James Harden said to the NBA investigators, investigating the whole incident, that he said he believed he was following protocols when he was at that event. And I was like, what? Like, how do you? I couldn't wrap my head around it. It's just at this point, it's pitiful. It's kind of like you're tarnishing your own reputation.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to be, as one of the best players in the league, you're supposed to lead by example. Especially for an up and coming team like. A team that needs you, it's kind of messed up for Salas for his, first head coaching gig with the Rockets. Yeah, I feel super bad for him. And they have he's like I said, I can go on about this, but we got other topics to talk about. But I just wanted to, bring that up. I think I just had a little frustration built up because.
No, I mean, here's the thing: the Rockets, from what I just quickly scrolled through Twitter, so I haven't read any articles on this, and we've had the sort of hints at it happening throughout the day. I know the Athletic was reporting earlier that players like Wall and DeMarcus Cousins were likely going to be ruled out because of contact tracing, and that seems to be the case. Yeah, they don't have the eligible 8 players. It seems like they have 7 players that would be active, and it's not necessarily that anybody has tested positive. It's the contact tracing thing, and that's the biggest issue. And I kind of am okay with this, just because the league is taking precaution and jumping on this thing and postponing it before even having to worry about the cases coming in. I'm really not concerned about it, and the NBA has the flexibility within the schedule, and that's why they haven't announced the second half of the schedule to build games back in and do whatever they need to work around this kind of thing happening. And what you both said, it's going to happen again. This is not going to be the first one. It's not going to be this is the first one, but it's not going to be the last one. We're going to have plenty of these throughout the season, and that's kind of why you have that second half of the schedule still on hold, because we're going to start to build in the postponements. And this game could be built into the first half as well, but yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I'm just going to insert this one thing that I just saw on Twitter. Have I uploaded it right? I think you guys will get a kick out of it. So somebody posted that. I think that's absolutely phenomenal.
That is great.
Let the memes fly on Twitter.
All these James Harden memes are freaking hilarious. Though.
I will say one thing. I've more or less been off Twitter for the past couple of weeks, but I certainly do miss NBA Twitter. If there's anything I miss from Twitter, it's NBA Twitter. NBA Twitter is the best.
I forgot to post this 2 weeks ago too. I uploaded it and never did it, but here was Roz's reaction.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realize you had a copy of that.
Sorry.
Did I send that to you?
Yes, you did. Well, you put it the Twitter. You put it the Twitter.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. That was my last tweet before I went out. I was out of there. But yeah, this game will be postponed. I guess we'll just have to wait and see when. But to Joe's comments here, I lost it now, but here it is. Still 12 games on deck for tonight. So we'll talk about those. Yeah, I was holding the Rockets thing, but I'm glad that you brought it up because it was breaking news. I was holding it till the end of the episode and we preview whatever is going on tonight. But let's get into that late game now. The Battle of LA. Yeah, we do. There's a couple of storylines. Obviously, the Lakers coming in ring night, a great sort of celebration without the fans. It does suck to see them not have the fans there, but they're holding the banner until they can allow fans. And I know that they said they're going to redo the sort of ceremony. We'll see if they redo the rings or whatever, but they're going to do some sort of ceremony for the fans. So it's cool to see that part of it. But Lakers, the stress from Bus and the players and the coaching staff is, we're here, we're celebrating, but we got to defend. And that's what this season is about. It's about defending the title for the Lakers, and the Clippers are coming into the situation, with redemption on their mind. They were the laughingstock of the league last year in the bubble because they were up 3-1. They lost the Nuggets there in 7 games. And then, they had the falling apart. They lost players, a lot of drama here with the Clippers. They're on a bit of a redemption tour. And similar to the way the last season started, the Clippers, won the Battle of LA in the season opener. I mean, it doesn't really mean much because game one of a long season. But PG was the laughing stock of the league, and he comes out there with a smooth 33. It looked like PG of old. He looked incredible. He looked really, really good. Kawhi going out there basically just on cruise control, dropping 26, and LeBron and AD. I know 22 and 18, I think respectively, but just didn't look tuned in. A lot of turnovers, shooting the ball poorly, and it wasn't just those guys. It was most of the players that were on the Lakers that got their rings last night. And the bright spots, I guess, for the Lakers were Schroeder and Harrell. But other than that, the Lakers they just look sloppy. They look bad. And I know the score, the final score being 116-109. It was the Lakers kind of pushed and pressed against the Clippers score there late, but it really didn't feel like that close of a game, if we're being completely honest. It felt like the Clippers kind of had a handle on it from the get-go. So Jordan, just take it and run with it. What you got?
No, I mean, you're exactly right. There's nothing, you didn't say anything that wasn't true. They just, they had I kept telling you guys all night, they had a lot of chances to get within 2-3 points, tie the game, take the lead, and they could never take the lead. They didn't lead at all at any point during the game, and I thought mentally that was like a huge block for them, because if they could have gotten the lead, that really would have probably broken the Clippers. But you're exactly right. I mean, Paul George came out, played very well, classic regular season PG-13 type of game. Was hitting. I mean, he was just hitting shot after shot. There was nothing their defense could do. They had hands in his face, and guy gets hot like that, you just kind of have to live with it. But on the Lakers side, a lot of turnovers. And I think that speaks to what I was kind of talking about earlier in the day with, them. This is going to take, a couple weeks to build that chemistry. You have a lot of new faces. When they were doing the ring ceremony, Jeannie Buss listed all the players that weren't on the team that would be getting rings, and it was a long list. So you have Schroeder, you have Harrell, you have Wesley Matthews, you have Marc Gasol, who looked very slow and out of rhythm as well. So there's a lot of pieces that they have to incorporate into this offense to know, guys have to be in the right spot at the right time on offense and defense. And they struggled with both sides of the ball for sure. Same thing with LeBron and AD. I thought the Clippers, to their credit, did a good job. They doubled AD very quickly in the post, especially when he caught the ball high in the post and was like 10 to 15 feet away. They doubled him right away to force him to make a decision to get the ball out of his hands and, take away that threat of him, abusing whatever post player was on him. So, kudos to them. It's a great strategy. LeBron, I thought, missed a lot of easy ones. He could have easily finished with 30 and maybe it would have made it a little bit of a different game. But, that's opening night. It was kind of, like you said, the same situation last year where it took him a little bit to get going. Just got to get in the rhythm, got to get more chemistry. I was hoping they'd come out with more energy because, the ring ceremony was cool. They did a great job. The rings are fantastic. They look super cool. But, it's game one. They're going to build upon it. They got, there's no time to even really dwell on it because you have Luka and the Mavs coming on Friday on Christmas Day. They're the headline matchup at 8, so they got to kind of get ready for that. And the only other note I had was it's a new season, but our boy Caruso, even in the loss, +3.
+3, but he didn't lead the team in plus minus. So he's far off from. I think Markieff Morris, right?
I'm just saying he found a way to get positive.
Okay, I feel you.
AD and LeBron were combined. Well, AD was -16, so
yeah,
I'll take it.
I will say that I agree with you. The Clippers, they lost pieces like Harrell, but for the most part, that core is still pretty true to what it was last season. And a big thing for the Lakers is going to now, because when they were listing the players that were not there from last year's roster, it was just like, do they have any players left other than LeBron and AD? And they did. But there's going to be a lot of gelling that this team needs to do. Marc Gasol getting in, they're not really playing up to his caliber. Still a lot of pieces that have been added to this team, and some new pieces on the Clippers showing up, like Serge Ibaka having a really, really good game. I thought Batum, offensively wasn't great, but he does a good job defensively. He has to contain LeBron, and he does as good of a job as any player can doing that sort of job. So you have to give him credit for that. Henry, what did you see from the Lakers-Clippers matchup? Because I know you, I think of the three of us, are probably the hardest on Paul George. So he kind of came and showed you up a little bit here.
No, yeah. I was happy to see this performance from Paul George, but it's funny because my friend tweeted, he's like, oh, he's using up one of his only 3 good games of the season, the season opener. And I thought that was funny because it's all about consistency with Paul George throughout the season. If he can play like that reminded me of Pacers Paul George. I was like, wow, I haven't seen that type of confidence behind his shooting in a long time. Because, when Paul George passed the ball out of bounds, did you guys see that?
Yeah, when he threw it to the ref.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I can already imagine all the memes that are going to come of that. And you know what? He bounced back. He didn't let it get to his head. He didn't shoot to the side of the backboard. he was balling, and I was like, okay, like, and you know what else surprised me? Serge Ibaka playing that good in such a short amount of time. He had 15 points in 21 minutes. And I was like, okay, Serge, like he's playing, he became like a good pickup and a good asset, losing Montrezl Harrell. And Nicholas Batum was playing pretty good as well. They have a better squad than anticipated. But like I said, like we were talking about it, it's the season opener. There's just a lot of factors too. Like LeBron was playing sluggish, AD was kind of playing sluggish. Like this Lakers team literally just came off a championship and like the shortest offseason, between like every other team in the league besides the Miami Heat. So just give them some time. Like there's no like they're still in line to go back to back. Like once they get it going, and when they do, that's gonna be inevitable too. Like this team is just gonna be obviously, if not the first seed, top 3 seed in the West. It's just going to be interesting to see, like, can the Clippers bounce back? Like, what can Ty Lue really do, in terms of also managing minutes and stuff? So there's a lot of questions in play. Honestly, it's funny. After the game, LeBron and Kuzma and all them, they're just posting their rings and stuff. They didn't care that they lost. They're like, oh, man, like, we just got our rings and everything.
A lot of autopilot last night.
Yeah.
Schroeder was good. Like, even though he didn't shoot the ball well, the fact that they just have like a third guy to just like, if LeBron needs a playoff or if AD needs a playoff, like he can just blow by somebody. Because I mean, that's all he was doing. He's so quick. I didn't watch enough OKC last year to realize how quick he is off the dribble. So that's good. And Harrell's that guy. Like he brings things to the table and he takes things away. Like his energy was great, right? He hustles and he gets the offensive boards. He's just a bully down there, even though he's undersized. I think defensively, we talked about it last year with him and the Clippers. They ran into that issue against Jokic in the playoffs, and I think Harrell is pretty bad defensively. He looked like he was lost yesterday. The rotation, there were so many plays where they would finish with the Clippers layup or wide open shot. And Harrell was standing under the basket, like arms out, like looking for help. Yeah. And it was like, I think it might be on you at this point, dude. I don't know. So he's definitely, there's going to be some things that you like about him. But like I said, I think the bottom line is they just got to get a little bit of a rhythm. But Raz, if you want to talk about your buddy LeBron and company, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I want to touch on Harrell for a sec because Harrell, obviously, the reigning sixth man of the year, and I don't think I'm sold on him yet. But I will say that when you talk about energy, that being the hot topic word, much better energy. You want his energy rather than Dwight Howard's energy out there. I'll say that much coming off the bench and whatnot. That's much more appealing to me personally, and I think most Lakers fans to have that coming off the bench as opposed to Dwight Howard. So I'll give him credit for that, and I think he will find his groove. You heard the comparisons to him and Lou Will's sort of pairing there on the Clipper side of it last year, and I think him and Schroeder will have a similar chemistry. I think Schroeder is going to be the starting point guard for that team from what we saw yesterday. I don't imagine really any changes there with the lineup. I think this Lakers team will put it together. So I don't see like Frank Vogel, 5 games and having to completely reshift the lineup. But LeBron at point guard, put Alex Caruso. So I don't know what he's going to do. But like, I imagine that this is going to be the lineup that we see a lot of. And I think it's just going to take some time for them to get it. But yeah, like LeBron, he really did look sort of checked out for a lot of the game. And I know he had the ankle thing close to the end, and after that he was more or less done for the rest of the night. But I would, you could attribute it to the short off season because the Clippers, they were out 2 rounds before the Lakers got out. So like not only did
extra time.
Yeah, well they didn't have just like 1 week or 10 days or whatever that Western Conference Finals series was. They were out before that because they got knocked out by the Nuggets a couple nights before that series even started. So like they had significantly more time, I think, than the Lakers to rest up and get a little bit more sort of energy under them. And I feel like you saw that a little bit. They just looked more checked in to the game. And the Lakers, I think, when you don't have that full off season, you can come into that first game of the season a little bit sluggish, and they'll find their groove. Like I said, like I keep saying, they're going to find their groove. It's just a matter of when, and I think they'll be fine. I'm really not too worried about them. But to see like LeBron and AD both be pretty bad in the season opener, I could certainly see the frustration coming from a Lakers fan. But I know
you guys felt it.
Yeah,
I just, like I said, I wouldn't have cared so much if it wasn't the Clippers. I just wanted to really beat the Clippers, but it's a marathon.
Jordan, what did you expect from Marc Gasol? Because he played 12 minutes at 0 points and he had 5 fouls, so he's a much better player.
He played 12 minutes. They had 5 fouls, 1 rebound, 1 assist, a turnover. Like,
but what do you think he can do better moving forward?
I told you guys, I was a little surprised they didn't seem to run anything for him out of the high post, which they did a lot in preseason. It's a great success. He was, he catches the ball there. You have LeBron running off of an AD screen, and now your defense has to pick and choose what they're going to cover. Or you have Caldwell Pope and these guys running, cutting back doors, and Gasol can hit them accurately every single time. So I was a little surprised they didn't really run a lot for him on that end offensively. Defensively, just, I mean, me, I was kind of complaining both ways really about the refs. I thought the whistles on both sides were a little inconsistent. So maybe he didn't have 5 real fouls, but. I mean, just a slow start, but I think he's a high IQ enough guy that he can figure it out. But to your credit, that we talked about, his former teammate Serge Ibaka got off to a hot start, and I think that was really big for them. He had a couple shots in the first 3 or 4 minutes that really helped the Clippers gain some momentum and give them the lead. So that's a good pickup for them for sure. I wanted Serge Ibaka as well, so I think he's going to do a lot of good things for them this year. Batum might be a little over the hump, but Ibaka's good.
Yeah, I think in terms of Gasol, I feel like Frank Vogel just kind of hasn't figured out what to do with him yet, just because last year the big man rotation that he was running with was not a big man who could pass or play make from the high post. Yeah, and the closest thing you had to that was AD, and AD is not really like a playmaker in the sense that Marc Gasol, he can pass out of the high post, he can make plays for other players. AD is trying to score out of the high post, and I think Frank Vogel is going to have to experiment a little bit with that lineup. But again, I don't see Gasol becoming like a bench staple for that team. I still see him being the starting center through most of the season, because I know AD likes to play at that power forward. He doesn't necessarily like to play at the center as much, and I feel like that if that's going to keep him satisfied, and it's like Marc Gasol is like a player built to play with LeBron. There's few players that are more perfect to play with LeBron, and LeBron's going to be like, once he sees Marc Gasol make a couple of those beautiful dishes, backdoor cuts, whatever it may be, like he's going to be like, yeah, this guy, he's here to stay. Right. So I'm not too worried about Marc Gasol, but we're talking about Ibaka, but like around the board, like the entire Clippers roster was pretty good. Like I don't think we really saw any downturn for that Clippers team. I mean, they had 4 other guys outside their 2 stars in double digits between Beverly, Williams, Zubats, and Ibaka, and Ibaka and Batum are going to make significant defensive leaps on a team that was already considered probably the best defensive team in the league by most, at least on paper. When you have like Kawhi, PG, and Patrick Beverly holding down the front line, and then you have Batum and Serge Ibaka behind him, that's intimidating. That's a very intimidating defensive lineup, and I imagine that they're only going to get better. I'm curious, a little bit more sort of overreacting just off one game. Do you guys still see the Lakers maybe ending up the 1 seed, or do you guys think that the Clippers' consistency in lineups are a little bit more consistency than the Lakers, at least maybe helps them get to that 1 seed? Because I mean, they were 1 and 2 last year, and they really weren't that far apart. And I know the Clippers blew out, but like we still need to respect them. We still need to respect them. They still have Kawhi Leonard, who is one of the top 5 players in the league. PG, I think, on a good day, is still a top 15 player in the league. He just needs to find that consistency. Do you guys see the Clippers maybe stealing that number 1 seed from the Lakers after one game? Let's overreact a little bit.
Not stealing. No,
not yet.
Yeah. Like I get what you're trying to say, but like this team has Kawhi Leonard. Like Kawhi Leonard is a top 5 player in the league. Like, and they have even more than a solid team. And you're right. When Paul George has it going, like last night, this team is just that much better. But just the Lakers look like they didn't care last night, and I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. Like I think a funny tweet I saw was like the Clippers are playing like it's the NBA Finals, and I was like, you know what, like kudos to them for getting the win, but like the Lakers look like very unplugged from the game. Like LeBron, he was missing wide open layups. He wasn't finishing at the rim. A lot of players weren't finishing easy shots at the rim. So like. Not to steal the number 1 seed. I can still see it going to the Lakers, but to contend better this year, especially with the pieces that they have. Like I said, I think Serge Ibaka and Nicholas Batum are great pickups for the Clippers. And then I look at the Lakers' depth, and I look at pieces they don't have anymore. They don't have Avery Bradley coming off the bench. As much as I know Jordan hated Dwight Howard, I still think he was a solid defensive presence for the Lakers last year. And I know that hurts Jordan for me to say that. But I think when I look at the Lakers depth now, I'm like, okay, are they 5 man deep coming off the bench? Like can THD, like I think Horton Tucker needs to get more minutes. He showed off in the preseason, and it showed like what he can do. Right? I mean, Kuzma had 27 minutes. Horton Tucker had 11.
Kuzma played solid yesterday, though. We'll give him that. And he
Yeah.
dropped like 15 points in and whatnot. So
Yeah, but then like also Kuzma is known for being very, very, very inconsistent. And then so then like when I see flashes of Horton Tucker, this is for all Laker fans. I'm like, don't you want to see what Horton Tucker can do given the opportunity of, let's say, 27 minutes a night or so? Like I said, this is something that they'll figure out. Actually, Jordan, what do you think of that?
Well, that's one. This is why you give Kuzma a very reasonable 3-year, $40 million extension. It's easily movable. You guys are making fun of me when I talked about it right away. It's so true. And then everybody on the TNT show, everyone has said it. That is such a good tradable contract. I mean, THC balled out and he played okay in the minutes he had last night. I mean, it's just, first time getting real minutes since the Houston series last playoffs. And you talked about Brooklyn earlier, experimenting with their minutes and kind of seeing, playing 15 guys. It was a blowout. I think they played 11 guys pretty steadily, and that's what the Lakers did last night. They played about 11 guys, interchangeably with mixes of minutes. I think the only guy that kind of got the, short end of the stick was, who was it? It was like Quinn Cook came in at the end. Wesley Matthews only had 11 minutes. He was pretty ineffective. But, I mean, you have Markieff Morris, you have Harrell, you have Kuzma, you have Wes Matthews, Caruso, Horton Tucker. I mean, it's, they're guys that you all have to play and give some minutes. So that's going to take some tinkering as well. Last year, they kind of only had about 9 guys, especially coming towards the playoffs. They had really 9 that they could really only play. So now they just have to make some adjustments. If it's one of those things, if they start out like, 3-6, okay, then we'll do the panic meter, and, then we'll see like what, where they're going to go from here. But I could also see this team come out and it's Christmas Day. They're going to show up. I think they're going to play, a talented Dallas team, but I think they have some mismatches there that they can take advantage of. And we know how great those games were last year, those LeBron Luka matchups. So yeah, I think they'll be okay. They come out, they do what they're supposed to do. They have 2 days off, get some rest, get back in the gym there, and they'll be okay.
Yeah, let's look ahead to tonight now because we have most of the other teams playing. I know now we just have 1 game taken off the schedule, but 12 games is still a pretty stacked night for the NBA. I guess the 2 sort of like highlight TV games would probably be your Celtics Bucks and then your late game, the Mavs Suns. Either of those games for you guys, Henry, I know you're probably looking forward to your Celtics, but for like any other games that you guys are looking at, or is it those 2 games that you guys both have your eyes on? So Henry, why don't you start us off?
I mean, I can say a lot about the Celtics of like what I expect and what I hope, can come about. But right now, like, don't get me started. But, I'm looking at the schedule right now. Honestly, I'm really looking forward to the Mavericks Suns. One, because I want to see Luka Doncic play. And then now I want to see the dynamic between, Devin Booker and Chris Paul, like how is that going to gel together? Obviously, it's game 1 of a 72 game season, but also game 1 gives a huge glimpse of what's to come. But aside from that, let me see. The Timberwolves Pistons looks like an interesting matchup because Killian Hayes, he's going to get his first regular season debut. Anthony Edwards, this whole Timberwolves like dynamic these past like I don't know how many years now, like is this finally the beginning to that end and the start of the new era? Hopefully. So hopefully that is, like there's a lot of good young talent, especially because I feel that Killian Hayes is in the right position, especially because he has Derrick Rose as a mentor. So, just to get any advice and, any mentorship from a player like Derrick Rose is going to, help him develop quicker in a, in a fast growing league. Aside from that, a lot of games today. The Rockets Thunder, we all know it got canceled, but Kings Nuggets, like Raj, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. Like, I don't know if the Kings are gonna do much there. But aside, also LaMelo Ball plays today against the Cavs.
Against my Cavs, yeah.
Against the Cavs.
He's already on triple double watch.
Isaac Okoro gonna shut him down.
Oh God! All right, you know what, Raj, go off on the Cavs real quick.
I'm excited. I'm always excited for Cavs basketball, whether it's bad or good. I'm always excited for Cavs basketball just because it's been so long since I've seen my guys play. Since March, back in March was the last time I watched my guys play. I'm not counting the preseason, and I am really excited to see Isaac Okoro play though because he looked really good in the preseason. I'll give him that much. And of the past few years, like the rookies that we've drafted and whatnot, he seem to have the most promise. You guys know I'm not a Sexton fan. I think Garland has a lot of promise, but he just hasn't. He just doesn't look like he has the confidence out there. Kevin Porter Jr. has his off-court issues, so he's not even playing right now. He's not even on the roster. I don't really know what the deal is with him. So Isaac Okoro is.
They dropped the charges apparently. So
did they really? Okay, but he's still not playing. So I was talking to somebody today. Actually, I was like this close to buying this. He has this shirt. He has like a Joker tattoo on his hand. He had like this shirt. There's a shirt of him like covering his mouth with the Joker tattoo. I was like just about to buy it, and the day after I was like about to buy it, the news came out, and I was like, okay, thank God I saved myself some money there and stick myself with that. But yeah, I'm excited to see Okoro play, and I'm excited to see LaMelo Ball play too, because I know we saw some flashy passes and some fun stuff from him there in the preseason. But like, is he really going to be the Rookie of the Year candidate that most of us expect him to be? I guess this will be our first showing of it, and I expect those two to maybe be going up against one another too. So that part I'm excited for. But of like the other games, yeah, I'm obviously excited for those two TV games that I just pointed out. But Portland, Utah is one that I'm definitely honing in on because, yeah, it does. It starts tonight. If we can make a run at that 10 seed, which in the Eastern Conference isn't that much to ask, that play-in is possible. But the Portland Utah matchup, because we obviously saw Donovan Mitchell make that leap in the postseason last year, like some of the funnest stuff between him and Jamal Murray going at one another. So to see him now against Dame, who was probably the hottest player of last season, I'm excited to see those two kind of kick off their season against one another. I think that'll be a fun matchup. What about you, Jordan?
Yeah, so two quick thoughts before I actually give you the matchups I care about. Number one, can't wait to see that dreaded Colin Sexton, Okoro, Seti, Kevin Love, and Drummond, just the all-size lineup for the Cavs. It's going to be great. So that's cool. And then
I think that's our starting lineup.
I believe it.
I think that's unless Garland starts instead of Osman. But
do you have another power forward you can toss in there too? Just to
no, Tristan Thompson's gone.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And then as to Henry's point about any game ever involving the Timberwolves and the Pistons, I'll put that on to go to sleep because I have zero interest in watching the Pistons. The Pistons will play 5 power forwards. I won't still do the Blake.
Yeah. They only have their entire roster as power forwards.
Yeah, literally. No, I agree with you. Portland, Utah could be fun. You could have a Dame Mitchell matchup of both guys having 30+ points. Obviously, Luka Booker, same thing. The other one that I like too, even though it's between two teams that are on the fringe for the playoffs in the East, Hawks Bulls, while it may not be the best played game, could be like very explosive. We could have like a 126. Yeah, it could be like a 127, 121 game, and like Levine and Trey and like Markkanen all have like 30. Like it could be a real high scoring game. So that would be cool. And then of course Pelicans Raptors. Just because I wanted, by all accounts, Zion's ready to go, and he's looked good in preseason. Toronto is they don't have Ibaka and Gasol down there in that front line anymore. So who's going to be protecting the rim? If he gets there, is it going to be Siakam? Is it going to be what's his name? Chris, is it Boucher or Boucher?
Boucher.
Sure.
So it's not quite to the defensive level that they had last year. So that'll be interesting just to see what that team looks like with Stan Van Gundy and Bledsoe, Steven Adams. So that'll be a fun matchup. There's a lot of good games. It's just good to have a full slate of games back. Like last night was cool, but it was like, okay, 1-2 and then go to bed. Like now it's like we have a full slate all night. Twitter will be wild. The memes will be wild. We'll have a ton of highlight plays. So excited to have it back for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'm expecting you guys to send me all those Twitter highlights because like I said, I'm more or less off. So I'm not going to see all that stuff, but I am definitely going to miss it. So I hope you guys send that in our group chat.
And Henry, Bucks by 7.
Ooh, you want to combat that? You want to combat that at all?
I'm gonna be like Jordan. I'm gonna be like, you know what? If season opener, I'm not gonna be surprised if we lose. So don't put a jinx on me. Even though Raj put a jinx on you with the Lakers. But you know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to like all the memes that are gonna come out. Because there's 12 games and like the NBA is just so marketable because it's so memeable. There's just going to be so many things. And like Raj will send it to you because I know you're off of Twitter. But yeah, I'm just really, really, really looking forward to the season. I know one game's already canceled, hopefully. And our league, I feel like the NBA is competent enough to, do things like this where they postpone before things get worse.
Get ahead of it.
To get ahead of it and to, avoid certain, worse scenarios. And yeah, just seeing younger players just, go into their second year, Zion, Ja, and all of them. Like it's gonna be exciting. Like it's still, I still can't fathom that the league is like back. Like back. Like so much content is gonna come out, but like yeah, it's gonna be really exciting.
My one actual prediction for the night, all jokes aside, is that I think Dallas can squeak out a win against Phoenix, and Luka's gonna put up some ridiculous triple double. It'll be like 37, 14, 12. So that's my one sincere prediction of the night.
That Luka Devin Booker matchup may be more exciting than that Mitchell Lillard. Those two guard matchups are crazy good to close out the night, so I'm really excited for that. But yeah, that'll bring us to a close for this episode. Thank you all for joining us. You know where to find us. Also be sure to find Nuts and Bolts Sports on merch store, Bonfire, Nuts and Bolts merch. Also happy holidays to everybody that's watching. Happy holiday to my two co-hosts. We'll be back post Christmas talking the Christmas Day games, and we'll have like maybe a week or so under our belt. Lakers might have a win. Cavs might have a win. Cavs might have a better record than the Lakers. Cavs might have tonight, Cavs might have a better record than could the Cavs have a better record than the Lakers and the Celtics after day 2 of the league? Do you think so? I'm gonna put some money on that. I think I'm gonna put the money.
I'll give you that probably.
If it happens, I'll jump back on Twitter. I'll tweet about it, and then I'll jump back off just to